My name is Grant Swartzwelder. I'm president of OTA Compression, OTA Environmental. We started this webinar series now 12 weeks ago. This is our 12th one. Have had a series of fantastic speakers, Railroad Commissioner Christy Craddock, bankruptcy discussions. We just had the former president of the Pioneer Water Infrastructure to talk about water issues. Next week we have Congressman Mike Conway. And then after that, the EPA Administrator for District 6, Ken McQueen. So we've got just a series of fantastic. This one I think is right up there with it, if not above, because of the timing of it all. We partnered with Permian Basin Petroleum Association as part of all this, and they've been a fantastic partner. With that, two quick housekeeping things. If you have questions, you'll see on the bottom of your panel, you can click chat, and Michael Lozano, who is with PBPA over the government affairs side of the business, he's going to be visiting with Commissioner Lindley, but he'll look for those questions. If you do miss this or you want to see more, we will have a recording of this on our YouTube channel. And so talk to PBPA or look at your invitation for the address of that. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Michael Lozano and to introduce our guest. Thank you, Commissioner Lindley, and look forward to it.
Grant, thanks for setting us up so well, and everyone, thank you for participating. It looks like we've got a good, robust group of folks today that have joined us. So I want to thank you for joining us. As Grant said, this is an important thing that we've been working on with Grant for a few weeks now, and it's been a really exciting opportunity for PBPA to engage with members and provide opportunities to engage with important officials, both elected, appointed, and in the industry, to share their thoughts and opinions about what's going on. And perhaps the 12th week is the best, because here today we're joined with Commissioner Emily Lindley. To those of you that don't know me, though, my name is Michael Lozano, and I do work for PBPA, focusing on government affairs and communications. Today, Emily Lindley is a familiar face to our industry and an important leader on regulatory issues as they relate to air quality and the energy industry in the Permian Basin. A proud native of Midland, who perhaps maybe even wishes she was from Odessa, we don't know. Commissioner Lindley has been an incredible asset to the people of Texas through her public service, which includes her 10 years of work at TCEQ, as well as a distinguished tenure as the Chief of Staff to the EPA Region 6 Administrator, and now she is working to lead an agency with thousands of employees spread throughout the great state of Texas. First appointed by Governor Greg Abbott almost exactly 2 years ago, and confirmed by the Texas Senate shortly thereafter, Commissioner Lindley has diligently worked to improve communications within our industry and ensure greater compliance through greater engagement. This work with the agency has provided our members clearer guidance and better directives about how to address issues, and we're thankful for her work. I quite literally cannot speak highly enough about our guest, and so in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and forego the other 4 pages I had written down and just allow her to start us off. So, Commissioner?
Thank you for that very generous introduction, Michael and Grant. It's great to be here today. I, like all of you, wish we were doing this in person, but I appreciate the safeguards we're all taking, and hope that this mess is all behind us soon. But I do hope all of you are staying well and healthy, and I don't know how touched people have been by COVID. I mean, I've had family members with it, and so I take it seriously, but I'm ready for us to get past this. So next time we get together, I hope it's in person, and I'm always happy to come to Midland. As Michael stated, I am a graduate of Midland High School. I will not say what year, but I'm getting back to Midland and seeing, I still have a younger brother that lives there, and I still have a lot of friends that live there. So it's great to go back, even though I hardly recognize all the new restaurants and things that are there. So I have a list of things to talk about, and I have all these papers in front of me, and I will try not to talk too much and leave enough time for Q&A, because there's a lot of things I could talk about. So if I talk too fast, or if you want to dive into something a little more, just know that I'm always available. And whether that's a one-on-one or whether that's more time with PBPA, whatever you all need, as Michael stated, one of my goals and one of the agency's goals has been to make sure the oil and gas industry knows who we are, the TCEQ, what we do, and just better communicate with you all and make sure you all know that the door is open and that ultimately our goal is always compliance. And while the Railroad Commission is the main regulated entity for you all, there is probably some engagement we need to be having with your companies. Depending on what you're doing, it might depend on how engaged we are, but we need to know one another. And so it's great to be here with you all today. So let me talk first and foremost just a little about what we're going to be working on the next couple months. One of the things, and that is gearing up for session, and that includes, whoops, my computer just froze, budget discussions. Sorry, got to make sure I move my mouse around enough so I don't freeze up again.
No worries, you're still rolling too, so you're good.
All right. So we have every other year going to session, like every other state agency, we prepare a legislative appropriations request, and that's acronym is called the LAR. And while ours isn't public yet, while we haven't officially landed on how exactly it's going to work, I can tell y'all in that list of appropriations requests we are going to be making, which will be very interesting this next session to see how that all plays out. Probably what will happen, our number one request will be money to the tune of probably a little over $1 million a year to retain our regional staff investigators. So we have, TCEQ has 2,800 employees. About 800 of those employees are scattered throughout the state, 800 to 1,000, I would say. And we do have some, we have a Midland region office, we have a San Angelo region office, we have a Lubbock region office, we have a El Paso region office, and those are probably the main offices that touch most of the members of PBPA. We do have an Amarillo office as well. And we have a hard time retaining those investigators. So what happens, as you all can imagine, is these investigators are brought in at a very, very low entry-level salary. We train them up, get them geared up, and then they leave for greener pastures, which is understandable. The amount of work they're doing, the amount of technical expertise they have is very appealing to either other companies or just, maybe that person just has, bigger visions, but we lose them. And it makes it very difficult for us to consistently have the kind of enforcement we want to have. And it's a benefit to y'all, to regulated entities, that we are able to retain our investigators. That way, those people, you get to know those people, and it's the same people, right? And there's a level of consistency there, and it's not a constant staff changeover. So I could talk a lot about that one, but I think y'all get the message there that we really would like the legislature to help us out and to give us a little money. We're not asking for more employees. That's kind of key there. Not more bodies. We just want money in order to bump up that entry level pay amount, so that's a little more competitive and we can keep them, and that they'll stay and stay with our agency for a while. So we're probably going to have a list of around 10 items we go to the legislature with and ask for money for things for. That is our number one, and that's the main one I just want to mention to you all today, because that one really does affect the regulated community a great deal, and it just benefits both of us if we can have consistency with our regional investigators. So be on the lookout for that request. Once I know that is our number one item we're going to be asking for, I will make sure I communicate that with you all, especially PBPA. And anyway, just appreciate your help in whatever way. There's other things there that we're all going to be asking for, I think. We'll see. But one thing we've also talked about is getting a little money for some more optical gas imaging cameras. So some of those cameras be able to see emissions a little better. We have some, they're outdated, and some of them no longer work. And so we need a little bit of money to boost our capabilities there. And so those will be two budget items that I'll circle back with you all on, but I just wanted to give you a little preview of right now. We don't know what session's going to look like. It will be hard to get money for anything, but they can't say no unless you ask. So we'll be asking for a few things. So let me talk probably what y'all want to hear the most about, which is air monitoring and what we're doing there. So as you all know, we started what we like to call kind of a targeted outreach back a couple months ago. And I came to PPPA, gosh, I don't know when it was, maybe the beginning of the year, and talked with some folks there, talked to some other oil and gas organizations. And at the time I was walking around presenting a page from our annual enforcement report. And on that page, I don't know if anyone remembers it. I would try and show it, but I don't think it'll show up too well. I have it here, a hard copy, were some graphs. And our Midland region, the graphs were, they stood out significantly. And what it was a chart of number of emissions events. And, you know, it kind of went like this, and then Midland went like that. There were significantly more emissions events happening in our reported, and these were all reported, self-reported, emissions events happening in the Midland region than anywhere else in the state. Usually where we would see the highest is our Houston region because of the Houston Ship Channel, and there's so much regulated industry down there. But Midland far and away exceeded everything Houston had going on for arguably the past couple of years combined. So I came to y'all and I said, all right, y'all, we got to get a handle on this. Y'all don't want these numbers this high next year. We don't want these numbers as high as they are next year, because it's an annual report we have to produce. It's the legislature directs us to, and we roll it out usually in the fall of every year. So we collect data from basically September 1 to September 1. So we're on the last month of the data that we've collected for this year. And I'm not going to say I'm happy to report, because I'm never happy to report on emissions events, but from what we're seeing right now, and there will be more data, a lot of the data will come in over the next month, but as far as pounds cumulative and the total number of incidents, excuse me, this year's numbers are looking better. And so that's great. And I just want to say thank you to all, anyone that might have had a part in that and had a part in doing your job to make sure either, there were less flares or whatever the issue might have been is appreciative. Obviously it benefits everyone, right? I don't have to go into all the reasons why, human health and that kind of thing, but it's great to see those numbers are down. I think overall the numbers will be down. There's a lot of people that are probably going to say, well, that's because of COVID. And then more so that's because of, the economic hit that the oil and gas industry took this spring. That might be true. I have no way of proving that that's what might have played a big part in bringing the emissions events down. So we might not have a real grasp of how much they came down until next year, right? Until we have another year's worth of data, but the numbers are down, and that is something worth celebrating. And proud of the work anyone on this call might have done to help get our numbers down, and very appreciative of that. So continue the good work if that was you. So there's that. That's good news, even though it's not good news because any emissions aren't good. But out of kind of the stuff that came up last year, all these emissions events, that kind of thing, our deputy, who is our highest person position-wise in the Office of Compliance and Enforcement, looked at a bunch of that data and called in a couple companies, and basically some of the ones that were that had the highest number of emissions events, and basically said, come on, y'all, let's work together. Let's get together. And they were four of what I would say kind of the larger companies out there. A lot of the really small ones, we don't necessarily know who they are or what all might be going on, but some of the larger companies, we brought some of them in. And I will tell you, we were very encouraged by the activities and even more so the investments these companies made in order to improve their operations and decrease emissions. They took it seriously, and they've done a lot to reduce. And so I don't know exactly who those four companies are. Kind of gets weird when we talk enforcement. I can't know all the nitty-gritty details just because of my position at the agency, but they took it seriously and they've done a great job. And so kudos again, I guess I should say it like that, for companies doing their part to bring down emissions events. So what has happened since then? That was going on this spring. The TCEQ also did a flyover. We do flyovers every year, so it wasn't new or out of the norm for us to do a flyover. This year, one of our flyovers included the Permian Basin, some areas in the Permian Basin. Let me read off a few numbers I have here. This was March 18th and March 21st. We did some flyovers. We did flyovers for activities for 40 pre-identified sites with a focus on complaints, emissions events, legislative interest, and regional knowledge, just our staff out there that kind of knew of maybe some potential problem areas. Out of those 40, there were 15 sites that required some sort of follow-up activity. 14 of those have been responsive to our requests for additional information, and one site's will be issued a notice of violation. So one thing I've been trying to communicate over and over again, so I apologize if you've already heard this spiel to the oil and gas industry, is when we reach out to y'all, it's very, very helpful for y'all and for us if you're responsive. And what we decided to do kind of in the year when we were looking at all these emissions events that were being recorded and that kind of thing was send out questionnaires. And they were truly questionnaires, and probably some of you on this phone call have seen them. And a lot of it was just to learn more information about what's going on at your site. We need to know what's going on, and we need to make sure that you're in compliance, because a lot of times it might be that you need something from the TCEQ, either a standard permit or registration. They are not hard to get. Some of them are even just online. You go online, it's a one-pager, spits out your permit. But you need some sort of documentation from us to be operating. And what happens is if we go out there, say we get a complaint, maybe an anonymous complaint, and we go out there and find that you guys are operating without a permit or maybe registration that you're supposed to have from us, then you get docked for that, as you should. I mean, that's, we have a job to do to do enforcement and make sure you're in compliance. And if you're not doing it, then we have to enforce it. However, if you are in compliance, it makes things a whole lot easier. And so my message has been, figure out if you need to be in compliance with us. If there's some sort of permit, small one, easy to get, or a large one, because the last thing you want is to be out of compliance. That's when enforcement really kicks in. And so the questionnaires were sent out to a lot of companies just to say, hey, here's a list of questions. Look at them, read through them. If it maybe sparks some questions in your mind about, am I operating the way I'm supposed to be and the way I'm supposed to be compliant with TCEQ rules and regulations? And if you have questions, pick up the phone and call us. Well, we're more than happy to help walk you through what you might need from us. And so what we kind of found through what we did this spring, sending out the questionnaires and that kind of thing, and a lot of it came from flyovers, is it worked. There were a lot of companies that reached out to us and said, I think I might need to talk to y'all. I might need some sort of registration. And they came in the door and they got into compliance, and we're good. I will tell you, the flyovers, there were also other groups doing flyovers this spring. The Environmental Defense Fund, as y'all probably know, has set up a very extensive monitoring network out around the Permian Basin, and they did their own flyovers. And let me rattle off a few stats from those, because some of this is very fresh. Back in April, we received an email from EDF, the Environmental Defense Fund, referencing flyover activities that they had done February 10th and March 23rd, which is already complicated because they didn't send us to it in April, right? So now we have a ton of data in front of us, and there are some images there that we don't like to see. I mean, there are definitely some folks in violation, but it's hard for us to say who was in violation, and it was from 2 months ago. So we kind of had this conundrum on our hand, but we do have the data. So what we did was we combed through all that. It was a lot, and a whole lot. I'll just leave it at that. We identified 62 sites. Let me back up. There were 62 sites addressed in the flyovers. We identified a total of 31 sites that might have something going on. 9 sites, we sent out someone to do an on-site investigation and dropped off one of those questionnaires. And 22 sites, I believe it was 22, were sent these questionnaires basically saying, hey, we got a video. We don't know exactly what's going on at your site, but please fill out this questionnaire and help us figure out if there's something going on there that that we need to do to make sure you're in compliance. And so all that happened. In July, we kind of got the same thing from EDF again. So on July 10th, so very recently, We got another email from EDF referencing their flyover activities, which happened the week of June 29th. We have since identified 24 sites that are going to require some sort of follow-up by either on-site investigations, or maybe, sending a questionnaire to them. On July 23rd, our Midland office did conduct one on-site for one of those 24. And I will tell y'all, all of these videos have been uploaded onto EDF's, their Permian map website, which I'm guessing most of y'all are familiar with. But if you want to see what they turned into us, it's up there. So if you have a longing to dive into that, you're welcome to. So the reason I say all that is just so y'all also know what's going on, right? On one hand, we're trying to get y'all into compliance. We're trying to figure out what's going on at these sites, making sure everyone's in compliance. And on the other hand, we have groups like EDF just data dumping on us saying, look at these videos and tell us there's not a violation there. And it's hard because, something could have been happening the day they flew over. That's very fair to say. By the time we get out there, it might be fixed. And so there's just a lot that we have to balance there. But I just want y'all to know that, other than just us doing our own investigations, that's our flyovers, we also have groups turning in data to us that we then have to go look into. And so another reason why I can't stress enough, it's good that we know one another, and it's good that we know where your sites are, because we might look at a video and say, oh, that's this company. And we might look at a video and say, we have no idea who that is or why they're there and why we don't have any kind of permit for them. And so we just need to get to know one another better so that we can identify problems if there are problems, or, be able to check the box and say, this company is in compliance. Here's their permit that allows them to do that, that kind of thing. So other monitoring I'll talk about really quickly, and then I've probably already talked way too much, even though I have a whole list of things I could keep talking about, are some mobile monitoring and some stationary monitoring that we've done. We did some mobile monitoring, which means we drive our van to West Texas and do a little driving around. We surveyed for H2S, sulfur compounds. We focused on populated areas downwind of certain activity sites. The first mobile monitoring was done December 8th through 14th, and then the second one was done February 8th through 14th. All those reports from the mobile monitoring are available on our websites, and we can send the link to that if you would like to Michael or whoever, and he can share that with you all if you're interested in seeing the actual data that we got. Which, real quick plug, any and everything oil and gas related that we do, we have a website for. And if you just Google TCEQ, it will take you to our main page. And in the top right box, there's a search box. And if you put oil and gas or oil and gas activities in that box, it will take you to the page where it lays out everything we touch as far as oil and gas. And within there, it will even link you up to this Permian Basin air data that I've referenced. We are planning, but we don't have anything set for probably fall, maybe, I don't know if it'll happen late this summer since we're already in August, but some VOC mobile monitoring kind of out in the West Texas area again. And then lastly, real quick, as far as stationary monitoring, a quick update there. We use that mobile monitoring data and kind of plugged it in to where we want to set some stationary monitors. We're deploying 3 new sites to measure VOCs, SO2, and H2S. And we're doing one in West Odessa. The site construction for that began at the end of July, so it's very new. And we anticipate being able to deploy the actual monitor in mid-August, so maybe another 2 or 3 weeks. We're putting one in Goldsmith. We have site construction began on Friday, I think, so it's very new. We're hoping to deploy in about 3 weeks in there as well, the actual monitor. And then in Midland, we're evaluating 2 potential site locations. They'll both be on City of Midland property. So once those are up, once it's, data has been QA, QC, all that data also gets posted online. So it's public as well. And you could view it there. So I have a lot of other things I could talk about, but Well, real quick, I'll do one other thing. A update very quickly on the NPDES delegation, which is something that this group has been somewhat engaged on over the past year or so. So if you don't know what that is, Michael can explain, or you can, I don't know, I haven't looked at the chat box. I know there's one or two things that popped up, but if I need to explain more what that is, I'm happy to. But just a real quick update if you're familiar with it. Legislature directed us to seek delegation from EPA to get this federal delegated program that will be permits for discharge produced wastewater from oil and gas operations. It basically, once we get the delegated program, right now Railroad has it, so the program is going to transfer to TCEQ, and then we seek federal delegation. So instead of you having to go get a federal permit and a state permit, assuming we get delegation, you will come to TCEQ for one permit, and you'll be done. We are directed in statute to submit our request to EPA by September of 2021, and I am really happy to report we are way ahead of schedule, which pat on the back, right? For a state governmental entity to be ahead of schedule. We're about a year ahead of schedule, and we anticipate getting that package up to EPA in September. So in a few short weeks. So we are at the final stretch here of kind of getting that thing wrapped up, put together. I won't go into all the nitty-gritty details on it. It is a huge overhaul, and it has been a lot of work for a lot of people at this agency. Stuff no one has seen, stuff I'm not going to dive into because it might just bore you, but we got it done very quickly, and I'm very, very proud of our staff because they busted their you-know-whats to get it done and to get it done a year early. So ideally, we submit that package in September. There are a few deadlines for EPA. The first deadline is they have 30 days to determine if our package is complete. And that is a big piece because once it's deemed complete, then EPA has 90 days to thumbs up or thumbs down it. And so those two clocks are very important. We have been working hand in hand, and I'm happy to say, man, don't get to say this all that often, that we've been working very, very well with EPA on this. Our Region 6 administrator, who you're going to have in, I think it was 2 weeks, and the Office of Water Director there have been outstanding, and I can't thank them publicly enough for their work on this and their cooperation. Administrator McQueen's been great. His leadership has been awesome. I think he is ready to give the program to Texas. He just needs us to come in and ask for it, but I'll let him say that, and I won't speak for him. So, but you can tell him I said that too, if you want. Whatever helps. We just want delegation. So I really could talk a lot more, but I will stop and see if there's any time left. I can stay on a few minutes longer, but you can also kick me off too if you need to talk.
No, we're happy to kind of keep going a little bit and roll on to a few questions. And you know, one, first of all, I think the big issue is there's no doubt going to be budget challenges in the next session. So I appreciate you addressing that. The industry always wants to be helpful in addressing these issues and providing resources to an agency that does have quite a bit of regulatory breadth over what we work on, and TCEQ is no different. So that's that, and kudos obviously to the work being done on NPDES. That in and of itself was a massive undertaking. I remember that being first discussed about 2 years ago now, heading into the last session, and thinking it was going to be quite a bit of a Hail Mary of sorts to try to finagle that through the process, and sure enough, it made its way out. Just like Andy Dufresne, it made its way out of the legislative process pretty clean. But I'm sure there still is some issues we're going to have to address on that moving forward. And I think one of the challenges that we know also is I'm speaking to our operators here. There are tons of questions that member companies have, and I want to really emphasize how great the agency has been at answering these questions. If you have, I mean, just I think it was 2 weeks ago, we had some pretty detailed questioning about some licensing applications that were made, and just really technical questions we were able to ask of the agency on their behalf, and got those answers back in no time at all. So the effort at the agency to be responsive to our questions has been incredible. And additionally, the work that the Commission's been having with EPA has been pretty unprecedented. And so we're really appreciative of that as well. And kind of diving into the EPA conversation, are there any other issues related to delegation that EPA is having with TCEQ that you know of or that you can share?
Short answer is no. And I would say more of that I'm aware of. Not that I'm not willing to share. If I knew,
Yeah.
I'd be willing to share. No, and honestly, just to be very candid, and this is just Emily's perspective. This is not a TCEQ or EPA statement, but there could be something that comes up here at the last minute, and by last minute, I mean right before November, right? They when an administration change is coming up, every federal agency is trying to push things through there at the end and get things done. So something could come up, but it's also a lot harder to get anything done right there at the end as well. A lot of those things take a lot of time. And so I don't expect to see anything major pushed our way or for us to go approach them with anything major other than this NPDES over the next couple of months. But all that, you know, come December, could be a different discussion. You know, the administration change, if there is one, which, you know, that's TBD. So that will affect a lot of that. And right now, if there are discussions about it at our agency, it hasn't gotten up to my level yet. I'll just leave it that way. So.
Well, I think, you know, like you mentioned, everything is a bit of a coin flip heading into November, and certainly that's going to impact what we do at the state level and the federal level. We don't really know what that will look like, and so we're certainly
there are significant impacts that will come to our agency as well, depending on what comes with that. So
no doubt about that. Well, going back to
Morgan just popped up her name. I think she just sent the link that y'all are interested in getting.
Oh, perfect. Morgan, thank you for doing that.
Acts funny. I'll just put it that way on her work issue computer, of course. Morgan is my senior counsel and a wealth of information, and her and Michael talk all the time. And she is always a resource for you all. I don't know if people know this, but I kind of hinted it earlier. So in the commissioner's role, I can't ever be engaged on a pending permit, discussions on it, or really know about it for that matter, other than I read about it in the paper, or enforcement actions, because those issues could come from the commissioners. And there's a little Latin term called ex parte that we use here regularly. And we can't have any knowledge of an issue before it comes before us for a vote. And so that's why I kind of hinted it earlier. There are sites that I don't know about that had issues, that got an NOV. If you are interested in knowing anything more about, or specifically about, maybe if your company is on a list somewhere, I can't be engaged on those discussions. Much as I'd love to, I just can't by law. But Morgan can help track down information, and she's very good at it, and she's very
responsive.
I know her and Michael talk a lot. So while I might have to step away on some issues you might want to dive into, if Morgan can't help you, someone at our agency can help you. So I'll just toss that out. She's on the call hearing all this as well.
And absolutely, and feel free to utilize, you know, me as a resource. You know, my email is pretty easy. It's michael@pbpa.info. If there's any issue, little, big, that you have with regards to any agency, but of course, in this context, TCEQ, I'm happy to serve as a connector with the agency and get you to the right person and get you the right answer. Likely that means I'm probably going to bother Morgan. But nonetheless, I think that's also really important. Kind of going off on that, I think one of the important things you mentioned throughout your conversation was how important it is for the industry to be engaged with the agency and communicative about issues. And I think, you know, what has been so hard for people to understand is that every communication is not adversarial. It's an opportunity to open up and answer. How can the industry continue to be more helpful at addressing issues that are before the agency, and more broadly or philosophically, how can we be, you know, more committed to our environmental stewardship part as an energy industry?
That's a great question. I appreciate that. So, you know, we have our regulatory wingspan is huge, and we probably touch just about every industry, every business in some way in this state. I would love for us to not be that big, but, you know, I'm more of a limited government person myself, but, you know, that's the cards we're dealt. So we regulate everything and everyone. So we have very, very robust stakeholder involvement processes, whether it's through rulemaking or through the permitting process here. And I would just encourage you to kind of two things: to dive into who we are, what we do, and if you have questions on how to get engaged on a topic, myself, Morgan, are happy to help connect those dots for you, because as I like to, I'm not going to say anything new or novel or whatever here, and I say this to our staff all the time, but we need to be talking to the regulated community and hearing from them, because we can't do our job as regulators if we don't know how we're affecting the regulated community, right? I mean, I pride myself in being a West Texas girl, but I have never operated a rig or drilled horizontally. So while I'd like to think we have good and fair regulations in place, we might be way off the mark in some ways, because we're not the people in the real world, as I like to call it, you know, actually having to live up to these standards. So if there's something that we just aren't getting right, we don't know that unless you tell us. And that's where we need to hear from y'all, and going through PVPA is one way, and that's great. But you can come to us as your own self, as your own entity. And I'm always an open door for just having discussions on what's actually going on out there that the TCEQ is not understanding, that we need to improve upon. So I would just ask you to kind of try and get engaged. I couldn't even tell you what it is, because I got it a little before this phone call started, but it looks like over the next couple of months, and once I have more information, I will send it to Michael and he can distribute to you all about. And it looks like an upcoming rulemaking that our executive director is going to be proposing, that it looks like is going to touch oil and gas regulations in some way. So it'd be great to hear from y'all on that, right? To make sure that we're getting the rulemaking right. That's my biggest thing. I'm not the expert on actually operations, right? I look at our rules and I dive into them and they make sense to me. But if there's something in there that you as an operator, or you as, you know, the regulated community is going, that's unreasonable and unrealistic, and here's what's actually happening on the ground, we need to know that. At least I think we do. And I think you'll find people at the agency are usually pretty open to hearing from y'all about that's not applicable, and that doesn't work in real world scenarios. But we don't know that unless we hear it from you. So that's why I always ask, please reach out, please tell me. Can't fix everything, but I would like to get things as right as possible the first time around. And I try and make, and anyway, I'll stop there.
Well, and I think if we have time for two more questions, I'll bother you with them. But the first one really is, I think, you know, kind of on that important vein of enforcement actions and working through the commission. I think there have been some conversations more broadly about how responsive the agency was in working with the agency, with the industry early on in this pandemic, and dealing with allowing operators some flexibility in addressing some of the natural challenges of inspections, given that personal space was needed, and there was a lot of initial worry about how to ensure safety with personnel. So can you kind of describe if there's any perspective at the commission related to kind of transitioning out of that initial emergency period and more broadly kind of focusing on single issues or anything like that?
So here at the agency, within the Office of Compliance and Enforcement, in the enforcement process, there is something built in called enforcement discretion. And basically that means the deputy of our Office of Compliance and Enforcement, or the executive director, or whoever, you know, depending on what level of staff is engaged on it, there's some discretion they can use in making a determination for an enforcement action. Just to put it broadly. I don't mean for that to sound like a tool where we can just kind of go wink, wink, yeah, we gotcha, and it's done. I mean, there is some calculated science behind when that's appropriate to use, and it's somewhat defined in different policies, you know, in our enforcement policy document. When COVID started, we put on our website and we made it known to, you know, a number of different entities and associations across the state, that because we started hearing from them saying, one example I heard, which I'll just use it because it's easy to understand, was there was some monitoring, and I want to say it was at a larger facility, maybe a refinery, I can't remember now. They contract out some of the monitoring to a third party, which happens all the time, right? Someone comes by and checks your stuff for you, and you pay for that service. Well, those contractors couldn't get to their site, and the entity wasn't allowing anyone on their grounds that wasn't a employee by that company. because of COVID. And so they basically said, hey, can we have another month to turn in that monitoring data? You know, instead of April 30th, can it be May 30th or whatever the deadline was? And so we granted that because it's reasonable, right? It basically saying it's not the monitoring is not gonna be exempt from it, or it's not gonna happen. It's just we need a little time because company policy is right now no third-party people are allowed on our site. And so we granted this enforcement discretion because of COVID reasons, and we have had that discretion ongoing because of COVID. And I will tell y'all personally, I'm kind of ready to say, let's back off of the because of COVID enforcement discretion that we've been allowing. Again, enforcement discretion's always been built into the to our enforcement penalty policy if it's needed, you know, case specific type things. I would just like to kind of steer away from them because of COVID. And I think most companies at this point, you know, now we're in August, have learned how to work around all the issues that we've all experienced with having to work remotely or whatever the issue might be for your company. And so I'm kind of ready to get away from that because of COVID reasoning and just go back to the way we've always done things, which is just, you know, there is enforcement discretion there if needed. And, you know, we don't use it a whole lot, but there are situations where it's appropriate. And I would rather just get back to using it in those situations than a company or an entity just saying, well, because of COVID, we'd like discretion, because while that might be appropriate, it just sounds weird this many months into how we've all been living our new normal lives. I don't know if I did a good job explaining that.
No, I think you did, and I think it's. I think
kind of like to get away from the because of COVID reasoning for granting it and just go back to our normal operations. That's probably a better way to say it.
Well, and I think, you know, I'm happy to speak on behalf of our members, and I know that when we ask for certain discretion on certain issues, we have good reason, regardless of whether it's because of a pandemic or because it's a genuine operational concern. So I think we understand that and appreciate the flexibility we had to begin with to kind of establish some different operational guidelines in the meantime.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I think, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You finish, then I'll give you another example of it real quick. Just
shoot, I was in transitions, but I go ahead.
Oh, well, you know, there's some good things that have come of it. And I learned about this one entity that has a number of sites all over the state. They're very large. They basically said, hey, we would like enforcement discretion because we can't get, I think it was, again, a third party onto our site and do the work they normally do. And what they came to us and said was basically, can't do that because we're not allowing outside people onto the property. But what we can do is use these cameras we have, which actually detect at a finer, you know, level and can detect more. And so what's written into our permit is we'll have, you know, this monitoring, you know, plan A monitoring always done. But what we'd like to do is actually use plan B, which is actually detects more. And it's actually a more scientifically proven, more sophisticated level of detection. So it actually kind of upped what they were turning into us as far as the monitoring system. I don't know if I'm doing that great. It's basically like we were requiring an old way of doing it, but they have a new and improved way. That wasn't in the permit, but they had to ask for enforcement discretion to do that. So enforcement discretion isn't necessarily like a, hey, we can't get it done, can we get away with it? It might be a, hey, can we do something different than what's written in our permit? And in a number of situations, it was, there's a more sophisticated piece of equipment we'd like to use because technology is improving all the time.
Absolutely. And that seems to be
so a lot of that come out of it too. And that's wonderful. And so I don't want enforcement discretion to sound like a free pass, a hall pass or whatever. It's some of the stuff that's come out of it's actually been wonderful. And it has provided a way for companies to use a little bit more sophisticated technology than what was originally issued in their permit to look at leak detections or whatever might be going on. So it's been pretty cool in that sense, but anyway, just want to throw that in.
Well, and I think, you know, that's a really good example of two things. One, it's utilizing technology that exists and it's providing a company an opportunity to explore an innovative way to apply the same standards just in a different way, but also doesn't create a system that everyone has to apply under if they can't yet. And so I think that's an important aspect of communicating with the agency and being able to provide that. And I think we have time for just one last question. I know, Dan, I saw your question come in I'll try to get you an answer offline for that one. But more broadly, as you know, PPPA is a multi-state trade. We do a lot of work in Texas and a lot of work in New Mexico. When you're talking about domestic energy in this country, you're talking about the Permian Basin, period, bar none. It is the most prolific oil field in the country, in the world. And so for that, we often see some different ways the states look and evaluate different things. I know there's a lot of questions from members about the work being done in New Mexico related to methane. Can you kind of talk about how that is the agency keeping an eye on that here in Texas, and also what could given Texas's obligations to that particular emission look like, or could it look like?
Yeah, I will tell you, I'm keeping an eye on it. I read as many news articles as I can here and there about what New Mexico is up to. And, I know the Railroad Commission adopted some stuff yesterday regarding flaring.
The data sheet?
I haven't gotten to dive into it yet. I've only seen one quick article about it. And that, when it comes to air stuff, that kind of gets complicated, right, between us and Railroad. And so we would need to work together, and we have a great working relationship with Railroad, so that wouldn't be a problem. We're not doing anything right now. I'll just put it that way. I know I mentioned the stationary air monitors that are going out there in West Texas. That's all we're doing, is putting stationary monitors out there. Now, I mean, obviously, I don't know. I'm not even going to try and rattle off an example of if we saw something outrageous out there, what that might spur. I don't think we're going to see it, because we do monitor. We do have some monitors out there, and they've never shown anything that we need to be really worried about at all. But we're going to get some more monitors out there, and that's really all we're doing for now. And other than that, we're kind of just watching what's happening in New Mexico. I haven't talked to. Well, I've talked to Administrator McQueen recently. We talk more NPDES than we do air stuff. He's a smart guy, and he's very smart when it comes to air issues, and
former New Mexico.
And former New Mexican, and he's an Oklahoma guy, and so he, the way he sees it is air stuff is a state issue, and I think as long as he's Region 6 administrator, he doesn't have a plan to make it a regional issue. Which is good news. That's good news to hear. We would rather that be, let us handle it, let the state handle it. But right now, all we're doing is putting out those stationary air monitors, and that's it. I'll just kind of leave it at that. If y'all had thoughts or opinions, I'm always open to that. If we ever did start to do more, I think there would be outreach. We would be engaging with y'all on what that might look like. But right now, we're just putting out some monitors. We have, I think, one in Big Spring and one in Odessa. We've always had them, and they're really old, and so we need to update those. Those areas are a little more populated, and those areas have activities, so that's why we're putting monitors out. And that's about it. So.
Well, I think you made a point earlier about how important it was to gather that data from a perspective, and I think that helps accomplish that goal. Yeah. And Dan, as I see your question there, I realize that related to EPA non-attainment, that may be even a better question for Region 6 Administrator McQueen when he comes up in a couple weeks. Nonetheless, we'll get you an answer offline, but I did want to point and plug that. Well, with all of that said, Commissioners, anything else you'd like to add, or anything we can focus on, or anything you want to make sure we are remembering today?
Oh, no, I feel like I have talked a whole lot, and I went way up, but I appreciate it. It's just great to be with this group. I'm sure I might have said one or two things that you're either scratching your head about or you want to know more about. So please reach out. Michael can get in touch with us very easily, and we'll get you answers or clarify or something I might have said if I was speaking too fast. Because I have a lot of stuff to go over, and I kind of just did a very, very high surface level on most of it. So happy to dive into anything more. Happy to talk about this stuff whenever, as often as you all would like. I can't stress enough how important it is for everyone to be in compliance. That is our main goal, is we just want compliance. And if you have questions on how to get there, going to our Midland Region office is your first step, and they're great, and they would love to get to know y'all better. And so I can't encourage you all enough to, and if you're not in the Midland Region office, go to the region office. That's, your appropriate office, but to just get to know us, because we are huge and we can seem scary and intimidating, but at the end of the day, I really don't think we are. But anyway, I would just like to continue conversations and make sure that we're engaged with you all, and you feel like you can be engaged with us. So I just appreciate it.
Well, and when we very much appreciate your work and your willingness to work with us and our members. We've had you out at a couple events. You were at our annual meeting last October. This October is going to be a little bit different for annual meeting given the circumstances. But as all of our members know, we're happy to connect you with anyone with any questions you might have. We're thankful for the opportunity to have you join us today, Commissioner, and really appreciate your work for the people of Texas. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining. We hope you have a great day. Just as a reminder, these events occur every Wednesday, and we're happy to have y'all. Thank you. Goodbye.